Parents of porn actors, when did you find out and how did you react / how do you deal with it? Not really mainstream porn, but a guy I work with found out one of his female cousins was in the industry because their grandma accidentally googled her granddaughter while trying to find her on Facebook, and the girl was doing cam shows and stuff using her real name. He didn't seem to care that much, but I guess their grandma was pissed. Son was in adult films, both as an actor and running a studio. He was in his mid-20s when he started, so definitely a grown adult. He told us right away. It certainly was not a choice we, husband and I, would have made, but it was his life. I did get to meet several people in the industry and they were all incredibly kind, well-adjusted and very professional. The owner of the first company I worked for made his fortune making pornography before starting the non-porn related business that I was hired at. I learned about it when I saw around the office the framed photos of him, his wife and his daughter at a pornography convention in Las Vegas. His wife and daughter were not on-screen performers, but participated on the business side of it. They were all very open about their past business. Not nearly as scandalous as the question being asked, but it was a surprise. My high school best friend left school at 17, moved out of her parents' house and started to do porn. She is pretty well known and famous on porn sites, however she comes from a traditional conservative background with parents who were always strict. Her parents found out only recently, after years of her doing porn, as her father is a driving instructor and one of his students showed him videos of her doing porn. Parents said that she was dead to them, unfortunately. That's exactly what I was thinking. Her dad or stepdad or whatever was such a fucking creep. Talking about how he shaves her and shit. Poor girl. She came out later saying she was coerced and pushed into that lifestyle and it deeply affected her. There's nothing wrong or shameful about sex work, but it is not for everyone, and pushing someone, especially your teen daughter, into it should honestly be criminal. I have a friend that started working as a prostitute when we were 16. Her parents found out when we were 20 and wanted to kill her. But then she paid off all of their debts and bought them a car and some jewelry. And then they loved her again. I remember asking her about that and she said to me, well, that just tells you what kind of people they both are. I was a whore, but as soon as I gave them money I became their baby girl again, and I will never forget that sentence. She stopped doing that few years ago because she reached her goal, amount of money, don't know how much. She has her apartment and car and she paid for her college all on her own. An Irish daughter had not been home for over 5 years. Upon her return, her father cursed her heavily. Where have ye been all this time, child? Why did ye not write to us, not even a line? Why didn't ye call? Can ye not understand what ye put your old mother through? The girl, crying, replied, Dad, I became a prostitute. Yeah, what? Get outta here, ye shameless harlot. Sinner. You're a disgrace to this Catholic family. Okay, Dad, as ye wish. I only came back to give Mum this luxurious fur coat, title deed to a 10-bedroom mansion, plus a 5 million savings certificate. For me little brother, this gold Rolex. And for ya daddy, the sparkling new Mercedes limited edition convertible that's parked outside, plus a membership to the country club. Takes a breath, and an invitation for ye all to spend New Year's Eve on board my new yacht in the Riviera. What was it ye said ye had become, says Dad. Girl, crying again, a prostitute, Daddy, dot. Oh. My goodness. Ye scared me half to death, girl. I thought ye said a Protestant. Come here and give your old dad a hug. Not a parent, but my sister did porn for a couple years. My mom and me found out from an anonymous message, probably from one of Mom's friends online. She asked me to check if it was true, so I did, and it was her. Mom called and my sister denied at first but then admitted it. She promised she was being safe and healthy and that we didn't have to worry. Mom was sad and disappointed and worried about her health mentally and physically. It was a difficult time for her. For me, I just pretended nothing was happening and tried not to worry. We were relieved when she got engaged and stopped her modeling. It's been several years now and my sister's life is completely different, but I think Mom is still worried for her and maybe blames herself a bit because of our struggles growing up. Edit, thanks for the awards. To answer some questions, I watched enough of the video to confirm it was her and also searched her name to see how much stuff was online. My mom has never watched her videos. Her husband knew about her porn work and encouraged her to stop, which she was planning on anyways. They have a kid and seem like they are happy. I am not a parent of a porn actor, but my next door neighbor was and we spent quite a while talking about her career. I won't name drop, but suffice to say she's no longer in the industry. Her so wasn't thrilled with it, so she took to doing one of the cam sites instead. Regardless, one of the things we spoke about was how her parents took it when they found out, not well. I don't recall how they found out. However, she got to talking to them, primarily about the pay, which was good, and they came to accept her decision in time. That said, they made it very clear to her that she was not to let her grandparents find out. It makes a lot of sense. It's basically a line of work with a lot of drawbacks and a bad reputation if we are to oversimplify it. And those kind of jobs switch from abuse to great depending on the pay. If I tell you I work between 5 and 60 hours a week with no way of knowing when because I'm on call 24/7 even on holidays, you'll say it's a shit job. If I get paid minimum wage, you'll do everything to get me to give up that job. If I tell you I'm getting paid $2,000 a week to be on call plus $100 per hour worked, it'll be pretty easy convincing you it's a great job for a handful of years. BTW, I got those numbers out of my ass, they have nothing to do with the industry. Basically, it's real easy to say you'll never do something or someone should never do something when it's an hypothetical suitcase of cash. Once it's a real suitcase full of cash in front of you or someone else, or a house bought with no mortgage, things become very justifiable. Looking at those video titles in the sex work playlist, holy shit. So perhaps slightly related, I spent the first 25-ish years of my life in an area I always assumed was upper middle class, and from what I understand, it was for the first few years. But it gradually went downhill, to the point that the police stopped arresting prostitutes for 2 reasons. First, because they didn't have adequate space to hold them. But second, and more important, because most of them were trafficked. The city put together a fundraising/awareness event at the local city park to inform everyone of the issue. Turns out that every prostitute, without exception, was a victim. None of the girls were entrepreneurs, they were all brought there by pimps, and treated horribly if they didn't make enough money. Legitimate sex work exists, sure. But I strongly dislike anyone who makes blanket statements like all sex work is valid or all sex workers are terrible people. The truth, as always, is very muddled, and a lot less appealing than you'd like. My older sister did porn for 2 years, she was caught when someone at my dad's work sent him a link, he opened it and boom. Family freakout. It spread like wildfire around our small city, 10,000 ppl. My parents cut ties because porn is against almost everything they believe. They always gave her money for college/paid it all, rent and activities. They stopped paying for her education, rent all of it. My parents took her out of the will. I haven't seen her in years, but that basically ruined her life. She got into drugs and is a meth addict God knows where now. My son is actually in a few films and has somewhat of a cult following, or so my husband tells me. It shocked me at first. Not in a negative way, but more of this is the same person who once as a kid threw a golf club at the girl he liked because he had absolutely no idea how to approach someone. As to the question of when I found out, It was my husband who came across it. He rushed home excitedly to tell me. He was apparently looking at porn at work, because, why not, right, and thought it was hilarious that he found a doppelganger of our son. Then he saw the tattoo we've both seen many times, and he found it even funnier. He wanted to do a big surprise reveal that we knew. He's the type of man who doesn't take life too seriously and just has a good laugh. I think if I hadn't met him, this kind of thing would have made me feel negative. But I find myself in the same boat. We just think it's funny more than anything. We haven't told our son yet. We decided to think about if it would affect him negatively. Him not telling us and all that. But I honestly don't know how long my husband can keep from pranking my son about it. Not at all. It would be exactly the same. I raised my son to be careful and not let his guard down easily. To think critically and make choices for himself. This would be the same if I had a daughter. If they choose to do something, as long as they're consenting, and safe, it's not my place to judge. I was a rebel as a kid. I did things specifically because my parents told me not to. They told me what not to do, but not actually understand why I shouldn't be doing it. They wanted me to be them, so I did the opposite. Both of my sons have graduated college and have good jobs. The son in question with ops question is adventurous, and tries new things all the time. But I trust he is doing this because he genuinely enjoys it. Not because he is in a bad situation. I also trust he is being health conscious and only working with reputable people. The same would be if we had a daughter. Smiley face. Oh. I got this. I did professional porn from 18 until I was like 22. Just about to turn 30 now. One night I had my friend come to a party at my parents' house. My friend did porn too. But she used a name really similar to her real name. My parents were weird and liked to Google all my friends. Well, they Googled her name and then came across her Twitter, and at the time we had planned on shooting together. So they found my porn Twitter. I didn't use my real name, but obviously they recognized my face. It was a very bad day. My parents are really conservative. They screamed at me for what seemed like forever and then kicked me out. I ended up homeless for a few months, then lived with my abusive boyfriend. Nowadays, I'm no longer doing professional porn and I live happily on the other side of the country from my parents. I have an actual job now. I'm on better terms with my parents now. We just don't bring up the porn stuff ever. Edit, I'm not posting or telling anyone my porn name. Not linking videos either. My daughter came to me one day and said she was intending to enter the adult industry and that it would pay for her ambitions in life. I thought she was joking and laughed in her face as if to say, "Good one, you got me." But it wasn't a joke, she was serious, and at first I was very concerned. I said to her, "Are you being pressured into this by your boyfriend or something?" She told me no, that it was something she wanted to do. I told her, "Well, are you going to tell your father?" She suggested I tell him instead. I agreed reluctantly but held off on telling him for a while because I thought maybe she'd change her mind and I didn't want to shatter his perception of her if she didn't go through with it. But she did go through with it. She called me after her first week of shoots and was gushing about how nice everyone was and how well it was going. She had flown across the country to do this, so we didn't have as much contact during this time period. My husband does watch pornography and I thought it was best to tell him before someone else did, or God forbid he came across it himself. I didn't know what kind of porn she was doing, so I had no idea if that was a possibility or not. Anyway, I did eventually tell him and he thought I was joking and refused to believe me, thinking it was some elaborate joke on him, until he called her himself and she confirmed it was true. He told her he was very disappointed in her and said things like, "How can you do this to us?" etc. He was visibly shaking during that phone call, like I don't know if it was anger or just adrenaline, but he was really amped up and I thought he was going to have a heart attack, but thankfully he was fine. I think it has gone well for her as she's never complained about not getting work, and she even got trips to Europe and Japan with all her expenses paid, which she loved. We have in the past spoke often about where she was going, what food she was having there. Things like that. She doesn't go into detail about her shoots, but she did fangirl about working with certain websites, directors, actors, and actresses who I obviously didn't know of, but she would explain how much of a big deal they were to work with and such. Her father hasn't held this against her, their relationship is fine. He won't ever discuss it with her, but he accepts she is her own person and can make her own choices. He has even gone as far as to say to me that his own reaction was hypocritical considering he consumes pornography regularly, even now. I'm more of a erotic novel kinda girl personally. For me the most important thing is she's happy, she's healthy, she's doing it for herself and nobody is forcing her. Also as a job she's financially secure, so what more can I ask for really? No one I know has ever brought it up to me that they've seen her in adult films. Would sure be awkward if they did though. I worked in an Olive Garden years ago with this guy named Dylan. I don't know how it came out, but someone figured out he did porn. I was really young and naive, so I was grossed out by the idea at the time, so I never bothered to watch them like some other coworkers did. Fast forward a few years and I am working at another restaurant. Dylan happens to walk in with his son and what I assume is his mother. They weren't my table, but I recognized him instantly. He was really good looking. I made a point of walking up to the table and saying, "Hey Dylan, how are you doing?" His face turns beet red and his mom gets pissed. She says, "Dylan is not his name." I told her nicely that's what he was called out at OG. Looked it up later and turns out Dylan was his porn name. I don't know how he used it at the OG, but let's just say his mom was not happy about his side career choice. So, my kid. Ugh. This is so strange to talk about. My daughter decided she wanted to be an adult model in a very specific and, in my opinion, weird segment of sex work. I won't get into exactly what that is because it embarrasses me to even think about it, let alone describe it to a bunch of strangers on the internet. Found out because she had been acting weird and buying strange shit. She was still living at home at the time, and she wasn't particularly careful about her social media. She had blocked me on her porn account, but didn't block one of my friends, who informed me about it. Which, of course, that particular conversation was just so much fun. Anyways, confronted her on it about doing it in my home. Made her stop. Took all her, paraphernalia and put it in the garage and told her she could have it when she moved out. She no longer lives with us, and I don't know if she's returned to her sex work, and frankly I don't want to know. I do know she has a full-time job, and she has roommates, so hopefully she hasn't. I'm a pretty liberal guy and am completely okay with, though not myself a fan of, most fetishes/kinks, so when I say it was weird, trust me, it was fucking weird. Edit, okay, so everyone will stop asking, it was extreme age play. Diapers. Bottles. Pacifiers. And it was compounded by her meeting one of her fans in person, after we confronted her on the sex work in our home, and trying to hide the rendezvous. We figured out what she had been up to, talked with her about it, and then discovered that the guy was a convicted pedophile. Pulled him up on the state registry and everything. My daughter was 18 at the time, the guy in question was 39. Her mother and I were, justifiably I think, pissed. So, my kid. Edit, this got more attention than I was ready for. I used too many personal details. In short, my sister is a sex worker and it tore the family apart. I have nothing against sex work/sex workers. I want them to be more protected and to be legitimized. The issues my family had with my sister's sex work is her history of awful mental health, and that she engages in dangerous sex work. I always want to say that not all sex workers become sex workers due to sexual abuse. I know a lot do, but it limits sex work and workers to see them all as victims. Perhaps my sister was abused, but I really don't know. If she was, I hope she gets the help she needs and deserves. Overall, I hope she, and all sex workers, can find themselves in less dangerous positions. Also, please stop saying I'm judgmental because I'm worried for her safety. Being judgmental about dangerous behavior is just a natural response.